Hi, I'm Alex, and this is not a cleaning channel. In this channel, I'm going to be talking about things that took place in my life, and perhaps that would be interesting to others. As many people, I struggle to keep my house under control. I have heroes that I look up to. One of these people is Dana K. White, who I've listened to for nearly a decade as I myself was trying to get my house under control after having kids and always being like a creative, messy person and just thriving on chaos. I can't say that it ever really worked for me, but with children, it really was painful to try to manage on my home, and I probably have undiagnosed whatever, which makes it nearly impossible to take care of things in a timely manner. My motivation seems to only kick in when there's like a deadline. And being a stay-at-home parent is like one of those things where you really do have to manage your own schedule. Now, my kids are a bit older now, so I've been able to get into somewhat of a routine. I think what you may find more interesting than cleaning or whatever I'm doing here is the fact that I've had such a turbulent, strange kind of existence until I became a stay at home parent that since I enjoy other people bantering while I clean, I thought this was just another addition to that space and that community. And hopefully, people can get uh, some support, some companionship while they do their own chores or whatever it is that they're either trying to accomplish or just trying to get away from accomplishing or procrastinating. So, either way, this is the channel for that. My heroes are, like I said, Dana K. White, and I just love listening to her. She kind of says the same thing over and over again, but it just soothes my soul to just have her on in the background. I feel like once in a while I get this hit of like insight that wow, I never thought of it this way. This is amazing and I can apply this. It's so relevant to other parts of my life and things like look, and always look. If you are procrastinating on something, you think it's a daunting task, or like you're not going to be able to make the decisions about this and that, that's like a giant pile of stuff in your closet, just take a look at it. Tell yourself you don't have to make any decisions about that. You are free to just take a look and then close the door. But maybe first you want to maybe you see a plastic cup that doesn't belong there that could just go straight into the trash. Or you see a pair of roller skates that you know you're never going to use again. So just looking, and then if you have some kind of circumstance in your life, like, oh, I don't know how to deal with this, uh, just just maybe give it a moment, give yourself permission not to make any decisions and just revisit the situation again. So, lots of insights from her. She's amazing. Feral Treadwife is another one of these, one of us who is just, attempting to do better, and she has done much better in her house. I heard her say something like, that the content may be getting, I don't know. As we get better at our house chores, it's almost like, okay, well, what do we do now? We kind of got this under control. I don't think I'll ever have anything under control. Also, I don't think I'll ever run out of things to talk about. So here we are. What I'm doing right now is I had a massive cockroach population which took over my apartment. This happens once in a while, and here you'll see me using diatomaceous earth, which I pull out all the kitchen furniture and the freezer, the um, whatever that thing is called, the stove, and then I'm cleaning up behind there, which actually looks pretty good because I do this fairly frequently. And I'm spraying some diatomaceous earth, which I haven't done anymore because it um, is it. I don't think it was effective. I found a Reddit community on German cockroaches, and the protocol that is recommended on there is what I've used. I'm not going to go over it here, but the person who runs the subreddit has a very comprehensive system of getting rid of roaches, and that has worked phenomenally well for me. We live in a New York City apartment, which is extremely old. It will be a centennial, or it will be 100 years old, a centurion. Anyways, it was built in 1928, which consequently is the year my grandmother was born, unless, of course, it was built in 1927, and then the dates are not as magical as I thought. The reason I even bring this up is because there's a very interesting backstory as to why we even live in such a problematic place. Spoiler alert, it's because it's actually affordable. But there are some caveats, like the neighbors are extraordinarily nasty, and I'll get into that maybe in a different video. So, battling cockroaches, as you can see, I got some dirt from back there. The protocol I'm using now is a combination of traps and a spray, which seems to be working really well. I'm no longer seeing them, only like I'll see one that's like in really bad shape, like it's dying once in a while, and I'm still treating every couple of weeks or every month. I'm still treating the this roach problem. So, but it's like completely manageable now, and the problem I have with roaches, which obviously nobody wants to live with them, but it's just so depressing to see them. It feels like you're just not where you should be in life. Like, I grew up with roaches. I grew up in the Soviet Union, in Kiev, Ukraine, which is where I was born, and I lived there until the 90s when that whole thing collapsed and we moved here with my parents. So I was like a preteen at this point, and we always had a little bit of roaches, both like my parents' apartment, my grandparents' apartment, and it's just a part of city living unless you live in like a luxury condo. Although I do know one of my friends who doesn't really have this problem, or didn't in the specific building until recently. However, it is just something that I feel like is part of my legacy, and I feel like roaches and pests are energetic. Like, there are things that are bugging you in the subconscious, like your subconscious is not aligned with your conscious. Like, you can manifest all you want and sit there and say, like, I want a bigger house, like I want a nice clean house, that is free of bugs, but there's something in your subconscious where you feel not worthy of having those things, and until you process that, you're never going to get to have because you're on the surface you want things, but on the subconscious level you're you're running these what are called like distortion patterns, and we can get into where I picked all of this up from. But your underlying um, history of your life so far, as well as ancestral baggage, things from the lineage, prevent you from fully embracing the reality that you want to create. So the signal you send out to the universe, not that it's a flaw, not that it's like false, but there are these distortions going on in the background that are corrupting the signal. So you're sending something out that is not 100% aligned. And so what you might be getting back is more of the same, which more aligns with your past than with the future you want to create. So I got into um, all of that woo in 2020 because what happened was that uh, I had some kind of an experience that came from the lineage. Basically, I have a complicated history with my grandmother, and I will talk about that at some point. But basically, in one day, I felt all the suffering that she's felt in her whole life, and it came at me like a truck just plowed into me. And I didn't know what this was. I didn't know if I was having like a midlife crisis or a panic attack. And I was not like a spiritual person and didn't really believe in the afterlife, but I did start exploring why my life felt so um, unstable, and so many really random things would just like come out of the blue. So I was already exploring like through learning astrology, like what is going on under the surface. And through this experience, it kind of let me know that my kind of ancestors were not at rest. So I went into a really deep um, search for things. I didn't really know where to start. I knew that it had something to do with ancestry. So I found a a woman who was just recommended to me through I think I don't even know what group or what, like maybe it's a Facebook group or what it was, where I just said like who works with like ancestry. I need help. I don't even know what I need exactly, but it's like I just need to start somewhere. I don't know what I'm doing. And somebody recommended to me Karen Chong of Spiritual Luminosity, and I started doing her putting up my quotes GFCs, which are these guided meditations for removing distortions, again in quotes. And these are all terms that she came up with. And she's not the only person in the light workers space who does, it's called frequency work, I think is the general term. So I started doing her meditations. She has so much free content. And as I always like struggle with finances, uh, it was such a welcome relief to see somebody who offered so many free meditations. As, for example, part of her podcast, she has a podcast that comes out like twice a month with a free meditation in each one of those, and she does like a monthly live sessions through YouTube. And I started doing this. Also, I got into the sphere and sundry magic materia, and I used a an ancestral ritual to um, connect with my ancestors. And at this point, we lived in a studio. This is like a railroad apartment. So we lived in a studio, and we had two kids by this point. So if you can imagine, it was under 500 square feet. And you'll see some pictures. I actually made it really nice uh, in there. But what happened was that we got like this horrible incident took place with the sewage just pumping into the apartment for a whole for how long? For a whole day. And like nothing, there was like nothing that, like, people were working on it, but they couldn't stop the sewage coming in for an entire day. Like, it started with a trickle, and there was like a fountain, and then like most of our belongings were just soaked in raw sewage. Nobody bothered to like turn off the the water, so like every time somebody would flush their toilet on that line, it would just come like straight into our house. It was a disaster, and you'll see some video footage here. And coincidentally, it happened right after I did my first ancestral ritual. So to recap, roaches are energetic, and you can use physical and metaphysical ways to get rid of them by sorting through your lineage patterns, as well as finding a good working solution for poisons and such that will hopefully take care of them. Here you can see that I'm applying some gel, which I'm actually not using the gel anymore because it dries really fast. And if they don't get to it within a couple of days, it's pretty much wasted, and it's very expensive. So I have a different method now. The other thing that's going on in this video is that my anxiety is ramping up because I'm waiting for the arrival of my friend, who I'm expecting around noon. So I'm really keeping busy with tidying. Now, the background of this friend is that she was my childhood friend from Ukraine, and through various circumstances, she and her family ended up living in Canada because of the war in Ukraine. Now, she herself has not lived in Ukraine for all of this time. Her husband got them to like other countries in the EU. Not that that's relevant, that's a bit of a rant, but I'm just setting up the fact that she is now has a visa for the United States because she has some friends who invited her who already came to the United States. Anyways, the point is that she is very nervous about going through immigration because various factors, like this is the very end of her visa, and she is entitled to use it until the very end of the visa expiration. So she could come in like the day it expires, as long as she enters that day. At this point, Trump was just elected, and I'm not sure if this has to do with what took place or not, but basically, and I don't know it in this video yet, and I won't know it for quite a few hours, but she gets denied at the border. So as I'm like cleaning, I know that I should expect her around noon, but then I know, like, with customs and whatever. But then by like 2 p.m., I start to really get uneasy. And then you'll see me like sit down and do some Reiki for myself to like ground myself, calm myself down. I do an attunement to with Mercury to kind of like better the um, travel communication situation. And it was like a Mercury retrograde during this period. And I also looked into a horary chart, which kind of tells you like you can ask a question of a horary chart, and that didn't look good at all. And eventually, I got the call from her that she was sent back ultimately. Now, I don't know if this is because it was the end of her visa. I don't know if it's because she, um, like, she, because her husband got in on the same visa a few months ago and he stayed in the US with their son, and that was fine. So what basically I'm like trying to keep my mind off of the fact that maybe I'm not gonna see her, and also I'm just like not knowing now that she didn't end up being allowed in. Like, I was just pushing so much for her to come, and I think she didn't want to because she was afraid of getting denied, and then maybe like what kind of implications that would have for the future, even though she's just coming in literally for a visit. She's got a job in Canada, so there's really no threat of her like coming here to try to live here. I just really wanted to like show her around the city and hang out, and I really like pushed her to come, and then I feel kind of like responsible that it didn't work out. That I know it's not my fault, but maybe I shouldn't have like hyped this thing up so much. And I ended up talking to her, and she seemed all right. Like, she's got like a life in Canada, so it's not the biggest deal ever. Just hopefully there's no implications for like future getting there, getting for future like travel to the States. So here I am doing a little bit of Reiki for myself and for the situation. And then there's like a roach that comes out from under the stove. And it's all like covered in the diatomaceous earth, which is like means that it's gonna die anyway. But you know, I just like stepped on it, whatever. Pretty disgusting. And here's the living room. And what we're doing here is sorting some recycling, which we kind of have to keep inside of our house until recycling day, which is really annoying. We are not allowed to use the ample downstairs storage, which is the entire basement, because the neighbors are terrible. More on that later. So, just have to like put it out of the way somewhere. Actually, now that there's like a different mandate on like trash cans, now we actually can take out some of the recycling, which is great. But some of the limitations of city living is, well, being like right on top of people, and if they happen to be really terrible, then you get to keep your trash inside of the house for an until garbage day. It's not that big of a deal really, like unless we have to go somewhere. Like sometimes it could be annoying if we go away for a holiday or something and then there's like no trash pickup, and just I always like take the trash with me and try to figure out somewhere to dump it like on the way to our destination. Yeah, so that's recycling. What else is going on? We painted like every room or like several places a different color, which is kind of lively and takes away from the fact that it's kind of dreary otherwise. Even though there's a lot of windows, the way this apartment is laid out, it's a railroad, so there's really no sunlight getting in unless you're at the two ends of the apartment. And then you're like ground level, so you want to like cover your windows for the most part. And yeah, it's kind of cave like in here. However, like it's twice the space, the square footage of our last apartment. Eventually, here you're gonna see some artwork on the wall as I finish up the room. It's from when I used to work for Amazon and I would deliver packages on foot. So in the city, that means by taking the subway. So I spent a lot of time walking around the city and also on the subway getting from place to place. And this was during the times where you could get a monthly Metro card. So that was another thing that wasn't exactly reimbursed, and that was only like a really small part of why working there was not ideal. There were multiple other reasons for why it was not an ideal place to work, mainly because everybody who was delivering was an independent contractor, meaning that you didn't get any benefits or sick days or health insurance. So, what they did when they first opened up in New York was they recruited courier companies, which is where I worked, and they had both dispatchers and couriers come over to work for Amazon. So it was like work out of a warehouse, and the routes didn't make very much sense a lot of the time. I think the maximum weight was something like 80 pounds, and it often was 80 pounds that was strapped to us on a backpack. I think that now they have these kind of trolleys with boxes on them, and people still will take them into the subway and have to deliver them. I think now the weight is even more than 80 pounds that a courier may be required to take. So, uh, this led to me being on the subway a lot. Basically, there's a 2 hour window in which you would get uh, a bunch of packages. And what was wacky about the route was that sometimes you'd get a really heavy package for a place that you'd be delivering to last. So you would have to do like 3 deliveries of the lighter packages, but still carrying the heavy one because these routes were just created with AI or whatever algorithm and didn't take into account that a person would be walking these routes. So they would try to make them super efficient in terms of like where you would go first, to make the route like the I guess the quickest that it could be, but without taking into account that you have this weight literally on your shoulders. I think that at some point I would bring a cart with me, but it didn't really make sense because the cart in itself was heavy and I couldn't really leave it in the warehouse facility because there was just so much like theft going on, and even my lunch would get stolen a lot of the days. And that seems like maybe not the biggest deal, but I was also pregnant for like up until 8 months. And I think I worked there a total of about a year. So, like, most of that year, I was pregnant and having my lunch stolen after like pinching pennies to make myself something nutritious. I would try to pay a little extra to get like better ingredients, and then having that just be like taken out of the community fridge was pretty infuriating. And again, like carrying it on me would just have added to the weight. Plus, it's nice to be able to keep things in the fridge for obvious reasons. The facilities were pretty nasty, also. Like, the bathroom would just have like drug paraphernalia, like needles floating in the toilet, a lot of just really gross, like uh, human waste everywhere that nobody cleaned because, well, they had a habit of hiring people straight out of shelters and people who were just really down on their luck. And not to say that that's necessarily bad, but to kind of like fill these positions which didn't offer benefits and also were minimum wage, it, it required kind of getting people who really either um, needed work to be able to stay in whatever like program they were in. And we were told a lot how grateful we should be to have these jobs, how it's a privilege, and how there's so many people out there on the streets who don't have a job, which our dispatchers told us. And I'm pretty sure this was not our dispatcher's idea. I think this came down straight from the management, which weren't even local jobs. Like, the better paying jobs, like for management and for the coders, came, they took people from Seattle who they housed in like condos and hotels around the city. They didn't even use like local people from the state. So, these people were just really not in any way, like, it created this kind of very obvious class breakdown between the company management and the management of the couriers, who were all local. Okay, so here's the art, and then we're gonna get into why we moved. This was our old apartment, and there was this disaster that took place. So, as you can see, the raw sewage is just pouring in. There's no place that it didn't go. I was able to like stack our couches on top of each other. Like, the kids' bunk bed was soaked. We had just put in like a mock wall to separate the kids' area. Now, when you see the next apartment, keep in mind that we don't own any of this, we're just renting. And then here we are in the new kitchen. As you can see, This apartment, which you just saw, is how we had to tear everything out because everything that was here was maybe original. I don't know. It was rusted through. It was disgusting. Also, there's a ton of lead paint here. My husband here is putting a sink into an IKEA cabinet that he cut out himself. I'm very lucky that he is extraordinarily handy and can build things. Here's some more images of how the kitchen came together eventually.